Hi, I'm Laurel Engbring. I've been working with Far Western for almost 8 years as an osteoarchaeologist. I did my master's degree in 2011 and my undergrad in anthropology. And I studied osteoarchaeology, which combines studying the bones of humans and animals. So when I look at animal bones, I look at archaeological deposits and learn about what sort of animals were being eaten and how those changed over time. When I look at human bones, I try to determine the age, the sex, pathology, and we also look into mortuary practices, what people were buried with, and kind of the deeper meanings behind those artifacts.
Great, Laurel. Could you explain why osteoarchaeology is important?
Oh gosh. In an CRM context, it's really important to identify human remains as quickly as possible because dealing with a grave and the descendants of the Native American people in California is very different than dealing with some pig bones or some deer bones that you find along the side of the road. Different legal situations are involved, and yeah.
Great. Can you explain? So you mentioned that as a CRM archaeologist, you are often involved in working with Native American groups. Could you just briefly explain maybe some of the ethical considerations there are with finding human bones and also the analysis of human remains?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always work with the tribes. When human remains are identified on a site, we contact the Native American Heritage Commission and they assign a most likely descendant. So I work closely with that person to ensure that whatever human remains I'm working with are treated in a way that they consider respectful and appropriate. And sometimes that means immediately reburying them, and sometimes it means a detailed analysis to learn more about their ancestors. But as the descendants, it's absolutely their right to decide how those remains are treated, and I try to advocate for them as much as possible.
That's great. Could you, this might be a curveball, we didn't discuss this earlier, but I am currently reading the excavation report for the Sinol project that I know that you were a big part of. There were quite a few human remains that were found and analyzed in that project. Could you briefly just maybe discuss what kind of interesting data came from those analyses, what we found out about those people that were living there?
Yeah, gosh, we had so many really interesting burials from that site, and it's being turned into an interpretive center, which is really wonderful, so future generations can learn about the work we did there. We had a lot of really interesting artifacts, a lot of shell beads, mortars that were probably imported from other places. The human remains, we had some really interesting diseases, and the site occurred really close to contact with Europeans. Some of the diseases we had, like tuberculosis, evidence of both in the bones, and when we did DNA analysis of the bones, we found tuberculosis in there. So it could be a possible evidence of transmission between early Europeans and Native Americans. And when you do have debilitating diseases, tuberculosis being one, but there are other things like leg injuries. I think it's really important to look at the way that those people were cared for by the societies that they lived in. And we've got a lot of really interesting evidence of that. We did some amazing strontium analysis at the site that looked at the teeth to kind of determine where people were from regionally, and we could see how some people immigrated into the site from other nearby areas and how others had lived in this location their whole lives. So that was really cool to see immigration patterns, and we also did DNA to look at kind of how people were related, which is fun.
Sounds like you you generated some really important data and some interpretations
Yeah.
from that site. For any students that are interested in moving forward and becoming involved in osteoarchaeology, can you provide a little bit of advice about what they might could do or should do to reach their goals?
Yeah, I'm definitely field schools. There are a lot of osteoarchaeology and bioarchaeology intensive field schools, or field schools that really focus on those topics. Internationally, that are really great. There's sometimes opportunities at an undergrad level to participate in those. Doing the master's was really awesome. I enjoyed it. I went to school in England, and it was like a 1 year just intensive course. And I think that that really gives me a niche now, to be able to be out in the field, in the laboratory, writing reports. I can kind of do it all, and it's great.
Well, Laurel, I really appreciate your time, and I always enjoy working with you. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for allowing me to interview you.
Thanks for being a team player.